ICQ Podcast, episode 447, In the Grid. Well, hello, fellow Amateur Radio enthusiasts, and Happy New Year to you. Welcome to the 447th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported this episode by Walter Washburn, KT0 Delta, an anonymous donor, and our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, we join Martin M1MRB, Chris Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin Mike Zero Sierra Golf Lima, Frank K4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie Golf Zero Charlie India Bravo to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is called In the Grid. Well, we'd like to thank our very kind donors to the ICQ Podcast, our first show of 2025, and Walter Washburn, KT0 Delta, kindly sent us a one-off donation and said thanks for the entertaining 2024. Happy New Year to the ICQ team. So thanks a lot, Walter, for your very kind words. And that donation, along with our anonymous donor, couples with the monthly subscription donors to, make your show advert free. Now, if you had intended to set up a donation, a recurring donation or one-off donation to your ICQ Podcast show at the start of 2025 and hadn't quite got around to doing it, no fret, you can do it by following our very, very simple link, and you go to icqpodcast.com/donate. All we ask you to do is think of the value you get from your ICQ Podcast, turn that into a monetary amount, and then send that donation our way. And everything you send our way, goes towards our running costs and keeping your show advert free. Right, well, we're going to go and produce our first show of 2025 for you by joining Martin, Chris, Martin, Frank, Bill, and Leslie to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including ham operator pays in interference case and celebrate British Railways. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to ICQ Podcast, episode 447, and tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Martin. Hi, guys. And episode 447, we're getting close to another milestone, aren't we?
Yeah, another milestone at 450. We're getting there, so it sounds good. I'm also joined by Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL, who's probably going to try and get me into trouble at some point in time.
You don't need me for that. You can get yourself into life. Look, if I wanted to get you in trouble, I'd just play the tape of the pre-chat. But we're not going to do that.
You got backup, Rothwell. You got backup.
Exactly. You know, Frank's here to step in.
Right, so I'm in trouble. Yeah, look, we have a clean rating, boys. You can't play the tape of me telling jokes. Okay, moving across the other side of the pond, we have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Martin, and hey, guys. Great to be here today.
Yeah, great to have you. Also, your side of the pond, we got Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, good evening. And he is here. He is definitely here, backed by popular demand, Mr. Leslie Butterfield.
Oh, good evening. Good evening, Martin. I'm still here, just about. So I'll tell you about it later, but very, very good evening to everyone.
Yeah, great evening. And this is the first one of 2025. So it should be a little bit of fun. Not a lot of news has happened over the Christmas period. It seems everything sort of shut down, but I'm sure we'll give you something to smile about. Not this first person didn't have much to smile about because ham operator must pay in first responder interference case. And the guy's going to be hit with a fine of $34,000. Frank, do you want to go first on this one?
Yes, I do. We have covered on the podcast, quite a number of stories of FCC enforcement. We had the pirate radio where commercial broadcasters were getting encroachment of unlicensed signals. And generally the hue and cry among the ham community is, bah humbug, FCC, what are they going to do? They don't have any money. They're not going to do anything. Well, we also covered how U.S. Congress is allocating more money for FCC enforcement. I don't know that more money for FCC enforcement caused this level of fine. I think it's there to send a message as much. I would add this context. The FCC chairwoman, Jessica Rosenworcel, was appointed by President Biden. We've had an election, as most everybody knows. And so a Republican from the other party, previous President Donald J. Trump, he's coming in, will be in office here in a few weeks. So she's announced her resignation. So she's doing this going out of office. And if you're going to do something that's, a little bit on the high end of things, if you're about to leave office, you've got the cover of you're going to leave the building. And so there's a couple of things about this I'll chime in with and then let the other presenters add theirs. Here in the States, we have a little bit of a culture that, when all else fails, amateur radio is there. That's been a slogan that the ARRL's promoted. They don't promote it quite as much today. Well, what does that mean? When all else fails, I'm Superman with a cape. I've got a ham radio license, right? I'm going to go help people. There are situations where that help is probably needed, welcomed, encouraged. But when particularly some government agencies are doing quite well, thank you much, and they kind of don't need your help, and stay in your lane is the word or phrase of the day, you probably should do that. So this particular ham, WA7CQ, he's getting a CQ response, okay. Jason Frawley in Idaho, he got a notice of liability some 2.5 years ago, but the FCC chairwoman has said, you just can't interfere with public safety comms, full stop. We propose the largest fine of this type for this interference. He interfered with the Forest Service and their fire suppression. And if you follow U.S. news much, you know that in Los Angeles today, we have one of the largest fires in what's called the Palisades neighborhood that they've ever seen. If you remember the old horror movie, The Fall of the House of Usher, that horror movie ended with this big old scary monster mansion, if you will, burning down. Well, you saw the homes of many people in Palisades, which is next to Malibu and Hollywood, where a lot of people that you watch on TV live. It's totally ablaze. So that's pretty serious business. So I'm going to leave that introduction there for the rest of the presenters. But this guy kind of had it coming, and we need to know what we should do and when we shouldn't do it.
Certainly do. Well, I'm going to stay your side of the pond and ask Bill what his thoughts are on this, because it's a big fine.
It is a big fine, and like Frank was saying, I think it was designated to be a big fine to discourage us in the first place in the future. This has been going on a couple of years now, because it looks like he did the interference in July of 2021. And I do recall this story coming out in 2022 that they, said he's, did this interference and he's going to have to pay this fine. But now it's finally finalized, all the appeals and stuff exhausted. And the comical part about this, if you want to say comical about any of it, I saw the frequency. I'm like, is that one of the business band frequencies or, multiple multi-use radio service MERS frequency? Is that one of the dot frequencies? Nope. This is legitimate public safety frequency. And he has no business being there. And that's the part that, my brain started spinning at, is like, what was going through your head? It doesn't make sense that you would even cause interference or even be on that frequency or even have a radio that could go on that frequency. Related to this was one of the folks posted a blog post about this, and they brought up the fact that there's a lot of these prepper radio frequency lists running around the internet. And I just want to encourage our listeners to stay to amateur frequencies only if that's what your license is.
Yeah, this is Bob K0NR. His
yes,
popular blog post.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
sent it.
very
He
good
sent me
post.
that
Yeah.
blog post. I think it was on Mastodon. But anyway, it's like any of these, public services or local frequencies, or I would even stay off the business band and dot channels. I mean, I would recommend everybody just stick to the amateur radio frequencies because you're not licensed outside of the amateur radio bands. Years ago, I used to help out with one of the counties, and they had us working on a public service band, but you signed in and out before they handed you the radio. They had to hand you the type accepted radio, and you had identification, and you signed it in, you signed it out, you signed it what you're there for. So this also sounds like I keep reading and seeing videos and listening to other podcasts, and they talk about self-activation. Don't self-activate. If you're helping somebody, you can volunteer, but if they say through their normal official channels that we don't need your help right now, do not go out and do stuff. You're just causing issues, and that's why I think another part of this, why this fine is so large, just to remind folks, it's like he wasn't supposed to be there, he wasn't supposed to be on that frequency, and he wasn't supposed to be helping. So it really behooves you to be very careful with this kind of stuff, and definitely do not transmit when you're in these kind of situations, or you'll be fine next in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a big one, and you're dead right. If you're not trained and you're not part of an operation like that was going on, you could very quickly become a victim. All right, they were on an exercise, but if it had been the real thing, you could have very quickly become a victim or made people lose their life by giving the wrong information. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think Frank and Bill have covered the basic facts very, very well indeed. Yes, it was $34,000 in fines, which is definitely sort of sending out a message to everyone else to don't do this. Look, we're radio amateurs. You're taking it. I mean, no matter where you are in the world, you take an exam, and it gives you a basic understanding where you can transmit, where you can receive, and that's why you have a license, so you know the rules of the road, so to speak. And I'm just trying to find a better phrase. Now, he did admit he'd done it. Now, there's a query about how many times he'd done it, but that's by the by. Yes, the FCC took a long time to finalise the penalty. Well, I actually think that's fair enough, because it means in my mind, it means they actually put some thought into it. But it was the firefighters, US Forest Service firefighters, that put in the complaint. Now, the bit that in the document that really sort of caught my eye was that it said the decision was upheld, and it was talking about the findings and his argument, and they said that we find none of them persuasive. Now, that we could put that into plain English if we want, but I certainly know means. Sorry, I really got. I'm difficulty having sympathy for the guy, because he should have known better. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from. It was an exercise which was going on, he tried to break into, and there's a difference between if you're the first person on the scene of an accident, like Bill says, wherever possible, use amateur frequencies. In an emergency, might say with all bets are off, but then I'm prepared to accept that. But if there's other people already doing the work, get out their way. Well, there you go. Martin, what's your thoughts?
I wonder, when you say an emergency, all bets are off, how, if you were in an area where you had like zero mobile phone coverage, but you had a radio and the only thing you could hear, for example, was like a marine frequency, would you be able to do that? I don't know even know whether that's legal and how they would react to something like that if you were asking for help. But that's by the by for this story. $34,000, that equates to about £27,500 in UK money at the current exchange rate. transmitting on emergency frequencies. Maybe, as I say, if you're a first responder and you can't get a signal, maybe you're trying to help there. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't have been listening. Well, he shouldn't have been transmitting on that frequency. In the UK, we have a rule: you can only listen to broadcast, amateur, and CB radio. The only other frequencies you can listen to are ones you are specifically licensed to do. So I do wonder, should he have even been listening to that? It says he can't afford to pay it. Well, I do have a little sympathy for you. You shouldn't have done it. You were transmitting. You might have endangered a life. You might have literally blocked, unintentionally, but you may have inadvertently blocked a call come through saying, "Hey, we need help at X, Y, Z." Your transmission may have been more powerful than the bloke out there on his little VHF handheld. You could have endangered that. So, yeah, FCC have thought about this clearly, and they're making an example out of him. And it's unfortunate if he thought he was trying to help, but don't be a wannabe. Just stay away from their frequencies. They're licensed private frequencies. What goes on them is no concern to you. Just stay away from them. You've got your amateur license. Go play with 2 meters. Go play with HF. Go and have a listen to see what's going on there. You've got plenty of other channels to be listening to. You don't need to be listening to the emergency services and interfering there.
Yeah, good point, Martin. Chris, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Not a massive amount. I think as it's pretty much been covered. If you're asking for help and you've got no other way of getting that help, then maybe you're allowed to use your radio to be able to do that, even if it's on a frequency that you're not allowed to use. I think in the emergency that's probably okay, but I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for that. Listening to frequencies that you're not authorised to do in the UK, as Martin Rothwell quite rightly says, you can only listen to those, essentially broadcast radio, CB radio, amateur radio. I believe in the US, and it may be certain states, you can listen to police and that's all. You can listen, that's allowed. In fact, you can actually go onto the website, go onto streaming sites and actually listen to certain police departments and fire departments. So I'm guessing that's allowed. But transmitting, no, that's for them to do. That's for the professionals to do. It's a bit like Martin often was saying, I, for example, I know first aid. I'm a lay, I've got a basic understanding of doing CPR and first aid. But when the ambulance arrives, I say, I'll let those guys take over because they know far more about that stuff than I do, and they're far better equipped and better trained than me. So, I kind of once something better arrives, let those guys deal with it. So no, in this case, it talks about he was interfering with, I think it was aircraft or something that was doing fire suppression, which
yes, that's right.
Makes no sense to me at all. Why? And he did it, I think it was his argument, like you were saying, Leslie, I think it was 6 or 8 times. But yeah, I don't understand. I haven't got the details. He thinks he was trying to help. I would say clearly in this case, it didn't work, shall we say. So I think heed the advice, and I think we're all saying this, don't do it. Let professionals get on with it.
You've got to be pushing your luck to get a complaint from a body, and I think he pushed his luck a bit too much.
Yeah, well, I think what's all been agreed is you shouldn't be on a frequency. If you're transmitting on a frequency you're not licensed for, and it's not a dire emergency, you've got no sympathy. I can understand if you're the only person, but equally, you're more likely to have somebody hear you on amateur radio if you put a call out. And bearing in mind, we've got lots of frequencies and repeaters. You're more likely to have somebody respond to that, and then they can telephone the authorities to let them know the situation. So, interesting story. A lot of money this guy's got to pay. Whether he will or not is another matter, but we will see. Right, let's move to our next news story. A Georgia club donates radio books to the local library. Now, I know that we've done stories because I know Frank's club has done this, but I'm going to go to Bill first on this one. Bill, what's your thoughts on this?
I always love stories like this because I'm well aware of here in the States that the vast majority of folks use their local libraries, and just part of the trick with a library is they always have a small budget to work with to buy new materials and new books. So by donating books like this to the library, you're ensuring that that local community has access to this materials. And in this particular case, it's stuff on amateur radio and licensing and that kind of stuff. I think it's just a great donation, and I'd like to see more clubs do this. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I was say it gets amateur radio into libraries, which is important. Frank, I know that your club has started this. I know you had some involvement with the ARRL, sorting out how they could send the books and all that sort of thing. But what's your thoughts?
Well, you're correct, Martin. The ARRL, thanks to, I think it was Bob Enderbitson, thought this was not a good project for them to continue, was a discounted set of about 10 of the popular ARRL publications. Handbook, their antenna handbook, and so on, and included a big map and things like that. And I think it was $200. They may have gone up to $250 now, but for a club getting $200 or $250, it's something that's certainly within reach. Now, this particular club in an area of Georgia, which is just southeast of Atlanta, in Butts County. Now, I know all the juveniles listening will be snickering. That's the last name of a man named Butts that the county was named for. And it's in an area that is in the shadow of Atlanta, but it's a fairly small area, okay? And so this club has donated these books. Now, here's the impact. Martin and Chris have done some work in their local library. They had an experience that was maybe not quite as welcoming as the one that I've had in my home county. County and locations vary, and libraries vary, right? So not every library will be welcoming, but you'll find that the popular book, Who Moved My Cheese? What is important today in library science? Books and periodicals are still important, but so is training and education. And by presenting books and building a relationship with the library, you'll find that, hey, here are books about this topic that falls into science, technology, education. And guess what? We can come talk about this to your library if you want us to. So it's a great idea. It's a foot in the door, and an amateur radio club, or better yet, group of clubs. This is a win-win where you have clubs that may compete over members. When they can come together and jointly fund something like this for their local library, that's also just a great thing to do, because you may not have quite as much of competition there. But Martin, this is, as Bill said, this kind of warms my heart, because it does something that builds a relationship, builds a bridge into community with an institution that the Gallup Research Organization says you'll find women and young people in libraries more than you'll find them in the local movie theater, by a 2-to-1 margin. So back to you, Martin.
Yeah. Well, as I say, your libraries in the States get used a lot more than we do over here for the sort of things we do. We try very hard. We'll try again at another point in time. But we want to involve libraries in the UK like you involve libraries in the States there, Frank. Right. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think any way to promote amateur radio is great. If people can't afford the books, or if people are just curious and wandering around the library, and maybe we've been thinking about amateur radio as a hobby but not really sure what it's about, and they decide to borrow the book, then that might get somebody into the hobby. So I think it's a great, probably isn't that expensive way of promoting a hobby. So, and it kind of puts us on the in people's minds. It's a reminder, isn't it? It's a branding thing. It's a reminder that we exist. Oh, look, there's a book there. Oh, yeah, Ham Radio. I remember that. Yeah, maybe I should look at that. So I think it's very positive, and I think it's a very good I can't think of anything negative, shall we say, about what's happening here. I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't think of anything negative. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Certainly nothing negative here. I think it's a great idea. What's been happening in the UK is that the libraries have become more of a community hub. So if you want your doctor's service, you want to see your MP, or there's a social event, then it's all done under one building, or there's a little hall and the library part. So that doesn't matter. I do think it's a good idea. Yeah, why not? And it's about building relationships, exactly as Frank said. I think it's something that we could do in Chingford and we don't do. And I'm certainly going to take it up with the committee next time I'll speak to them.
Leslie, let me echo what you said. I just finished building a database of all the libraries in what I'll call the Greater United Kingdom, including Wales, etc. And I was struck by this concept of hub, because as I had this database of the libraries there, and I would look them up and I would geocode them. So many of them had their names changed from whatever library to Library Hub in that town. And I was struck by that. And it's a beautiful concept that reinvigorates the concept of community.
Yes. And you know where you want to sort of deal with the local authority. There's an office there you can go to. So that's the idea. You don't have lots of buildings everywhere. There's just one place, and that's it. So that's sort of the background to that, Frank. Like I said before, I think you're absolutely right. Let's try it.
Why not? Why not? Martin, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Not very much. I mean, any promotion, I think, as Chris says, is a good thing for amateur radio. If they are donating books, I would hope that someone from the club had thought, maybe we should leave a little pile of leaflets here about the local clubs and perhaps how to get licensed if that's not already included in the books. Because if you're going to go, you're going to pick up a book, maybe you've seen something on amateur. Oh, I'll read that. I'd like to know more about this, or where do I find out about it? Yeah, okay, maybe nowadays you can go to Google, but leave some leaflets there as well. That's not a bad thing. So I'm not a library member because I have a very short attention span. So I don't really go for books, but I do remember years ago I was a member of, and I lived out of the borough, so the local library that we had wasn't very big, and so the next library along in the next town was a huge library because I didn't live in that borough. We had to pay to be a member, and my mum paid for us to be a member there. And I remember at the time being so excited because I found a book, and it was a book about CB radio. And of course, this was the time when I was getting into CB and I wanted to know more. And so that, the fact that existed was an invaluable resource for me. As people are going to libraries nowadays for other things, the fact that they still have books like that and people are donating books, that's just a great thing.
And just Martin, just to comment on that, having about involving clubs and involving leaflets, maybe a sticker or something even handwritten in the book as it's donated by the club, saying, this is donated by this society, here's the websites, is that to get in touch if you want to, get more involved.
Yep.
Yeah, all good ideas, guys, all good ideas. And as I say, any promotion for our hobby has to be good news. Now, next news story, a year-long special event celebrating Britain's railways. So I'm going to go to Leslie first on this one, because I know, Leslie, you and I have both worked on the railway in different roles. But over to you first on this one, Leslie.
Well, my professional job for 16 years was a technician on the railways, and I dealt with all the mechanical and electrical stuff on the rolling stock and doing under frames and repairing. So I sort of have a nice. I mean, it was a good 16 years, and I very much enjoyed it. So, but anyway, back to this. Yes, it's a special event station by Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, of the British Railways Amateur Radio Society, and it's about promoting amateur radio. And you've probably seen these sites on the Heritage Railways. I volunteer my time occasionally on the Bluebell Railway at Shenfield Park in Sussex. So I think, again, it's about promoting amateur radio. They get a good throughput of people, and it's about introducing the public to amateur radio. It's not a contest thing at all, and 5900, all that nonsense. I'm not a fan of contests, but there you go. It's about promoting the hobby, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. The promotion is good, and yeah, it's a bit of fun. Martin, what's your thoughts on this one?
So for the railways, I mean, it's an interesting thing to celebrate, celebrating British Railways, but, it's an excuse to get on the air, isn't it? It's another special event station.
Of course it is.
Worked, if you can anybody can anybody participate in this? Can you put a railway station on the air? Railway parking is expensive. I don't know how you do that, but also, railways in the UK, they're being nationalised again. So it's an interesting thing to celebrate, but hey, get on the air, work them. It's another call sign for your log. Maybe there's another QSL card there or something. I don't know. Why not?
Yeah, well, as I say, why not? My last job on the railway involved, and I'm ashamed to say, but this is what they wanted me to do, a lot of time sitting around doing nothing. I was there as a responder if required, and I spent quite a bit of time on the radio at a very, very remote station. In fact, it was done on the talk group, Leslie, so maybe it doesn't count, but Phil Hickinbottom, VK6ADF, and I think had our longest conversation during the COVID period, and nobody was allowed to be out and about, but I still had to go in because I was a line on a spreadsheet, I think. And
I had the letter as well. So.
Yeah, and we had a 3.5 hour conversation. We sort of put the world to rights and everything. So yeah, I could have done that, and I did it with HF as well from the station. But a bit naughty, I know. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Special event sessions are always fun. I think this one's more something that the British Railways Amateur Radio Society have arranged themselves. I don't think they're asking for people to go out and put stations on, unlike other events. This is more about promoting this particular event. It's something that's happening, I think, throughout the year, and it's to celebrate the 200 years of train travel. So 1825 was when trains started in the UK, I believe. So this is about celebrating that, and it's part of a wider set of events. So this is just the amateur radio bit, but there is something called Railway 200, which is celebrating this in a number of different ways. So it looks like, just looking at the website, there's a website called railway200.co.uk, and on there it's got a countdown. So it looks like it was 27th of September. Looks like that was perhaps the first railway journey in 1825. So yeah, throughout this year, lots of things happening, and part of that is amateur radio special event stations. So listen out for the call sign, which I think is GB0LMR, and if you hear them, work them and get them in your log, and get the QSL card as well. It looks like they're doing that as well. So that looks like it could be one to try.
Yeah, should be a good one. Now, Frank, I know this is a UK thing and it's a special event and one thing and another, but what's your thoughts on it? And would the American Railways ever do anything like this?
Well, American Railways have, unfortunately for passenger service, have kind of met with a relative demise. As a child, I'm in my early 70s, but as a child, I used to ride a passenger train from central Georgia to Atlanta and back, and it was a train that left Savannah on the coast, and it would reach Atlanta about noon, and it would leave Atlanta about 6, and at least from central Georgia, you could get back home by 9. It was great for shopping. There was a wonderful department store called Riches, and many women particularly would hit the train, go up and shop and come back. My mates and I would go up and see some of the new professional sport teams like the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta Braves. Now, I'm saying all that simply because I've got a background, at least as a child, in riding passenger trains. But here today, we have Amtrak, which is a federally ported, type of passenger rail service, and it's quite good in many ways, but it's far more limited. And I think the culture around railways in the states has taken a dive. Now Bill's in Pennsylvania, and there's maybe a bigger concentration of trains in that area of the country because of the population density. So I'll listen with interest, to quote our friend Leslie. I'll listen with interest when Bill weighs in on this. So with that preface, I love trains, and I think this is a great one. I can still remember when the train would come through, they would not stop, but they had messengers, and it looked like a big tennis racket without the webbing in it. And the man on the ground would hold that up, and you'd have somebody in the train have his arm out like a hook, and he would snare that thing with his arm and bring it in. And that train never slowed down, but there would be some sort of set of messages in that racket, if you will. So I remember little things like that, and I just think this is great. So I hope you guys over in that neck of the woods near Sussex can go look and see. And participate.
Yeah, there's some interesting things went on the railways and one thing and another. Well, I think Edmund will probably, I can pretty much say Edmund will probably try and work quite a few because he likes special event stations. Bill, have we left you anything to say about this? Because I know it's a UK predominant story.
Yeah, just a few points. To directly answer Frank, I think I have to drive like an hour and a half to get to the nearest rail station because they're all gone. The good news is the trails and the old railroad beds have been recycled in most locations into what they call rails to trails. So they're for hiking, biking, and other usages. And I use.
Why not?
Yeah, I use them all the time because we have quite a few around here. And so, for something different, when I'm not hiking up a mountain, I'll go hit one of the local trails, which almost all are rail trails. The bonus about that, when you have kids, is the pitch on the angle on the old rail lines are always low. So it's not like you're hiking up the side of a mountain. It's slowly going up, so it's not that terribly hard to walk on. So that's why I like taking the kids on them with their so like their bikes and stuff or just hiking. The one thing I noticed on this article, when you looked at the QRZ page, there is 4 call signs to listen for: GB0LMR, GX4LMR, GB1FRT, and GB2TT. And if you work all 4 of those stations, you can qualify for this really nice certificate. And it's the 200 years of train travel since 1825 certificate. I know folks that like to hunt special event stations like Edmund. But it's a really cool looking certificate, and I think that would look really nice on the wall. I don't know if I'll be able to get some of these. It really depends on how the bands are. But overall, I love this kind of stuff. I love special event stations, so I think this is a really good story, and I'm really glad they're doing this for the 200th anniversary. I had to really look some stuff up after you sent this one out last night, because it's like I didn't realize it's been 200 years already for rail travel, and it's like, yeah, it has been. So it's like, wow.
Yeah, these things come around really, really quickly, Bill, and it does do your head in. Well, I'm fairly lucky. As I say, I'm of retiring age or retired age, and because I live in London, I think people over the UK get bus passes that you can use for free on buses. But if you live in London or the London area, you not only get a bus pass, you get a pass for the underground and a pass for trains that go through London and a pass for the tram service and the like. So, and the Docklands Light Railway. So I quite often do use public transport. And if I'm going into central London, I've got 3 rail stations within a mile and a half. of me. So the furthest one's about 1.5 miles away. So, I still use the rail and quite enjoy it, but that's another story. Right, last news story, because I said there wasn't much happening. Parker solar probe touches the sun. Well, I don't think it quite did it, Frank? But I'm going to get Frank to go first on this one, because you've had some chats with your friend on this a few times, and it's an interesting, not necessarily amateur radio as such right this minute in time, but if you don't understand what's happening with the sun, how are we going to understand propagation? Frank, over to you.
Yes, people who listen regularly to the podcast and have for a while remember our good friend Dr. Scott McIntosh out in Colorado. He did used to be the number 2 person at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. He has since gone into the private sector, and he is a vice president for Linker, Lynker, Linker Space. There's such a demand for his specialty that he went into the private sector, and you might think, okay, so what? Propagation? Well, gosh, what's important about that? Well, we got all these GPS satellites up there, and we've got all these other communications. And when the sun clears its throat, so to speak, and emits a coronal mass ejection, sometimes those communications both go dark and they get their ears blown out with that much coming at them from a CME, for instance. So the propagation work that Scott's done is all about what's going on in the sun and how does it behave. And I've had a couple of hams after we've published the 2-article series in Radcom with a different theory say, yeah, well, why don't y'all know what's going on in the sun? And, I'm not a solar physicist. I'm a statistician, and I tell stories fairly effectively. And my usual response is, well, why don't you go stick your head in the sun and come back and tell us what you see? And then there's usually a double take. And that's the problem. We are talking about a phenomenon in the sun that we can't directly observe. Used to teach a PhD course called Structural Equation Modeling with Unobserved Variables. So we can't observe what's going on. So we have theoretical models and ideas. And thinking about it being a solar dynamo with plasma might be thought of as what we see in volcanoes with stuff coming to the top of the magma, yet it's a gas. It's so hot it's even a gas, and yet it's magnetized. So understanding how the dynamo of that, and how important magnetism is for the sun, this Parker probe is the closest to my smart aleck response to people that say, well, why don't y'all already know? Is it's not exactly sticking its head in the sun, but it's coming closer than we've ever come to sending sensors out, not just with pictures, but to measure other things, and coming close to the sun so we can make some better empirically based guesstimates about what is going on in there, Martin.
Well, yeah, that's great. And in fairness, I'm going to throw the hand grenade in the room. This is one probe. We'll get a lot of information back from it. But I would personally like to see more probes so that you've got a consistent block of data rather than just from one device. But yeah, I mean, you've got to start somewhere.
Part of selling that to Congress and other funders, Martin, is to show that it works and you learn a good bit from it. Congress was kind of skeptical on this. So you want money to go burn it up. I mean, the person that doesn't want to expand their thinking or doesn't want to trust science kind of asked that. But you're absolutely right. I certainly hope and pray that there's a Parker 2 and Parker 3 and whatever they decide to name it.
Yeah, on that one. That's good. Right, Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I was looking at the NASA website about this, and there's some phenomenal numbers they talk about. So, this happened on Christmas Eve, September 24th. That's just passed last month. They're saying it's touching the sun, or essentially it's still going to be 3.8 million miles above the sun. But that's we're talking about astronomical numbers. That's pretty close. But the speed it's travelling at, and they're saying this is faster than any human-made object has ever moved, is 430,000 miles an hour. That's ridiculously fast. But no, this is very impressive. They've got this to get within a hair's breadth of the sun in those terms, and they confirmed it survived that. They're gathering lots of data, and this is the first of a number of these. I don't think this is going to be from what they're saying here. This is they've made history by it. This is the first time, but this is going to be a regular thing where they're gathering that data, and that's going to help us learn about the sun. And even though it's a big bright thing in the sky, I'm sure there's an awful lot of things that we need to learn about. It definitely affects us here on Earth. We know it sends out lots of radiation and has an effect on radio and other things like power distribution from power stations to people's houses. I know that can be affected. So, and I'm sure there's lots of other things about the sun has an effect on us. So learning about it in more detail is always going to be beneficial. I imagine, as Frank was saying, this is not a cheap thing to do, and I guess that we have to balance that against the benefits. But it sounds like this has been a great success again for NASA. But yeah, just phenomenal speed. What was the number again? 430,000 miles an hour is a difficult thing to really imagine that sort of speeds. And obviously it's travelled a long way to get there. So it's very clever stuff.
Yeah, certainly interesting, and certainly interesting what it's doing to do. Martin, what's your thoughts on this one?
I don't really have that much more to add on this. I mean, I'm just thinking when people were saying, that's really, really fast, I'm thinking, International Space Station goes pretty fast. And I Googled it. The International Space Station, for context, goes at 17,500 miles an hour. This is 430,000. That's incredible. I just can't even get my head around that. I mean, the whole concept of space fascinates me in itself. Everything that's out there that we do know about, everything that we don't know about, and the distances covered just to see things that are in our own vicinity. I think we mentioned before, it takes half an hour for a radio signal traveling at the speed of light to get back from the probe around Saturn. And so you can get your head around the distances there. But looking at some of the pictures that have come off of this Parker probe are absolutely incredible. I mean, it's not just what it can do, the technology of capturing the data from the sun, taking photos, sending them back and stuff. Think of the heat protection that they would have had to put on this thing as well. There's a lot of very, very clever people have built this thing. And I would encourage people, definitely go and have a look, even on Google Images. NASA Cosmic Torch, the Parker Solar Probe's journey is it's just incredible close-up pictures. It's mind-boggling. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it certainly is, Martin. It certainly is. Bill, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is one story I was actually aware of before you sent it out, because my buddy, who's an astronomy nerd, I hate the word nerd, but that's the only thing I can use to really describe him accurately. He's a member of, we have radio clubs. There's actually astronomy clubs. I didn't even know this. And they rent time in this huge observatory, and you have to go plan weekends out to go up over. And I mean, it's a big deal. Well, he's texting me on Christmas Eve going, dude, it got to 3.86 million and didn't burn up. And here's all the data. And check this out. This is so cool.
They call those sky parties, Bill.
Oh, that's the word he used. Thank you, Frank. Yes. Because they do. They have a big, to me, it looked like a field day camp out, but it's for astronomy. But anyway, yes. And this thing is going to get close to the sun again on March 22nd and June 19th this year. And if the spacecraft is still usable, I guess they'll do some more passes. I mean, to me, see, I'm pretty solid on the sun. I spent a lot of time because of propagation learning about it and stuff. But what I spent a lot of my undergrad on, unfortunately, even though I didn't get that to go into this career, I spent a lot of time on nuclear science, and way too many courses and way too much math. But anyway, the sun is a magnetically stabilized nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And so when you just do, napkin math on, being, 4 million miles away from it, there's so much radiation and energy that's just produced out there that I'm shocked the spacecraft still works. so, so I spent a lot of time once you sent the article out going through NASA's website trying to figure out how do you build shielding to work.
The story behind that alone, Bill, right there, is an incredible kind of deep dive rabbit hole, if to some. But just understanding how the group that developed the shielding went about it and accomplished it is an amazing feat of science.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. And so, when you put this on the stories for the week list, and yeah, this is definitely a closer because this is a real good feel-good story. Because once they get this data set, they got some of it now, but they're going to do a couple more here. Boom, 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 get some more data. They're going to have enough data from different points to actually be able to map out like radiation over time and distance to a level of precision I don't think we've ever done as a species before. There's going to be decades worth of analysis just on this one probe. This is for, Frank briefly mentioned, there's a lot of folks, and especially when you talk about the federal budget and that kind of stuff, this experiment alone is going to net knowledge epically orders higher on our understanding of how the sun works than any other money we spent in the past.
Bill, I'm hoping that just as the landing on the moon, conspiracy theories notwithstanding, brought people into that realm of science, I'm echoing your sentiment that I hope this brings a lot of young people into that field.
One of the state schools here, that's one of our sister schools, actually has a graduate program in space weather. Dr. Tamala Scone's one of the professors down there, or an adjunct. I don't know if she's an adjunct or a full professor down there or whatever, but I can just imagine when the spring semester starts here in another couple weeks down there, that they're going to have special topics courses on this. They would almost have to, because it's fresh data. And this is going to be research projects for grad students for a decade, easily. And it's awesome. So I'm really glad you shared this story because it is really cool. And everybody's like, well, how's this related? I'm an HF operator. I live and die. My enjoyment of the hobby lives and die based on the sun. So I really care about sun science.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it, Bill, but it's a good one. Leslie, have we left you anything to say on this one?
Well, I've been listening with intent. I think that the problem is that we're putting so much sophisticated hardware up into space, and we're reliant on those systems working. And the economic knock, if they got damaged, is horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Now, you can say, well, that's pie in the sky. Well, no, because if you look back, there was been events in Quebec with power lines being knocked out, and in 2013 there was a study by Lloyd's of London and the Atmospheric and Environmental Research in the US, looking at the cost of a major CME event, and the figures they come out with are quite astronomical. So that's what I would say to the government. Look, knocking out these systems is going to knock the economy. And what we're doing here is we're building a better picture, which is great for science, and we're trying to find out what we don't know. This is what research is all about. So, yeah, the spacecraft may fry up in time, but that doesn't matter. It's the data that you get from this experiment, and then I'm sure there will be more to follow that will give us a better picture on how to protect our systems on Earth. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, it's a great news story and to finish up on. And I think we've had, although not many news stories this time, I think we've had quite a good discussion on a lot of them. Now all that's left for me to do is find out what you guys have been up to over the last few weeks since we last spoke on the podcast. Let's go in reverse order. Bill, what have you been up to?
Quite a bit. I know in last show, Edmund mentioned that, he's having a little trouble on HF because it's Christmas light season. I never had that issue until this year because I outfitted the house with permanent Christmas lights or permanent outdoor lights. And it's a really cool program. It does a lot of neat stuff. The house looks great. Very happy with it. However, I started getting noise on HF real bad. So I took advantage of a holiday sale and got some RFI filters from Palmar Engineers. They actually made a kit for my radio that had filters for the power supply, filters for coax, filters for Ethernet, filters for the microphone cables and the CW keyer and stuff like that. And so I was able to significantly notch out the filters, and I want to shout out to them. I got my kit and I was missing a filter, a toroid for one of my antennas, and I dropped them a note, and the thing showed up a couple days later. So they definitely took care of the customer.
Bob at Palomar is
Bob was
great.
the name. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Bob is the name. Now, I'll have to admit, since the statute of limitations may have expired, I was a customer of theirs early on, and there may have been a 500-watt CB amplifier that I happened to acquire and fed a Yagi antenna. I don't know. My memory's kind of fuzzy on that,
kind
Bill.
of a fuzzy memory thing.
But they make great stuff. The balance and stuff that I have from them and Onans, they are top.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed. And it did notch out the vast majority of the signal. I have 2 or 3 spot frequencies I'm still working on, and I got a couple more filters here to put on, and I'm actually going to put them on the Christmas lights themselves. Because really what happens, so if folks are trying to do the theater of the mind, I have these things mounted on the eaves of the house right by where the storm gutters are for rain. And my HF antenna comes down off the pole and the coax goes right by the downspout. So I'm within like 6 or 7 inches at that particular spot of crossing it at a 90-degree perpendicular. So I'm going to try to put some more filtering there to see if I can notch out the couple spots. I mean, it's like one was like 28,550 was the frequency. I'm not on 10 meters a lot. The 2 that got me was I have 2, one in the 15-meter CW band, which is right where the POTA stations go, and one on 20 meters where the POTA stations go on the sideband side. And I'm like, so I need to, and I'm going to still work to do, but all the other bands, I mean, it cleared up everything on 40. It cleared up 160 right away, which 160 is always a challenge. Cleared up 60 meters, cleared up 17, cleared up 12. It's just phenomenal. And it got rid of other noise sources that I did not know were local noise sources. So it's always good to take a look at these kinds of things as you're working on your stations. And I even put one of the filters I got is small and light. I actually have that in my soda backpack because sometimes I get up on the summits and there's like a large RF site there for like repeaters and emergency management and public services and cell phones and that kind of stuff. And so sometimes you'll just get interference from, harmonics off that system. Well, now I have a little turret I can run some, loops of coax through and see if that helps to keep, so I can do a activation a little bit easier. Operating wise, I've been hitting soda stations and POTA stations like crazy in the last 5 or 6 weeks here. DX wise, I was able to pick up East Kiribati while they were on the air in the Pacific. I picked up New Caledonia on CW during the RAC conference, which that's the Radio Amateurs of Canada contest, I think it is. I might get that.
Yeah,
acronym
that's
wrong.
it.
It's the only station I worked in the contest because I needed New Caledonia on 10 meter CW. So I picked them up quick. And I did work, well, that's back in November. So I already talked about that. I did work Greenland back in November. But overall, I had a couple weeks off of work because it was our annual shutdown around the holidays. I got a whole ton of projects done around here. One of my Christmas presents is a Raspberry Pi 500, which is the brand new all-in-one keyboard. My Shack computer, for everything except Smart SDR, is a Raspberry Pi 400. So now I have a 400 and a 500. The 500 has more RAM and is definitely faster, but I may actually see about taking that out as a portable setup for like picnic tables and stuff. Because I have a small monitor, the Raspberry Pi monitor that comes with it, or you can order it with it. And I just got a battery big enough to power both of them. So what I have is a BioNO actually I have a couple of these, but I have a BioNO battery, lithium iron phosphate, and I have a converter that takes it goes basically 9 to 25 volts and takes it down to 5 volt at a couple amps. So I'm able to power the Pi off of that, and so I'm going to try to take that portable and see how that works. So it's a little experimenting stuff I'll be doing here in the spring because I do have a small lightweight laptop I take when the rare times that I need the computer log when I'm going to be doing stuff. But I think a Pi in general is going to work a little bit better for me, mostly due to the weight, because even the Pi 500 weighs less than my laptop. My laptop, I swear, weighs no weight at all. So I got some more fun stuff here to try as spring rolls around. So we've had a very busy couple weeks here in the shack.
Yeah, certainly sounds it, Bill. Certainly sounds it. You've been having a lot of fun there. Frank, what have you been up to since last time we spoke on the podcast?
Well, Martin, I've not done quite as much amateur radio stuff. I did have my second 3-month PSA test from my prostate surgery back in June at non-detectable. As I say, that's 2 down and 3.5 years to go. It's been just wonderful the way Mayo Clinic in Rochester does it. They send you a box. They have a little styrofoam box inside that box that you take to, in my case, LabCorp. It's a national commercial lab that does things like this. And I can even just walk in. I don't have to really make an appointment. I walk in, take it, they draw blood, they centrifuge it, they pack it, they put it ready. They put a sticker on there, prepaid for Federal Express. I walk in FedEx, I go, LabCorp, yep. Mayo, yep. Do them all the time. You're done. And within 24 hours, literally, I had my results back in my patient portal. So number one, health was focusing a little bit on that. Number two, my shack is torn apart. I have built-ins on the wall and PVC pipes that when we built this house, they run into the attic and then outside. So I've been reorganizing my shack and rerunning through raceways, cabling and things like that. And I'm going to put some BerryFlex coax outside and run it in from the pipe that has my outdoor ground. People will argue about this, but I'm on the second floor and I also have an outdoor ground, but I have a false ground under the carpet in this particular office, the entire office, that are copper strips 1 foot apart, following Tom Rouse, W8JI, his design. So anyway, I'm redoing that, kind of reorganizing radios and different parts of my shack and moving on a little slowly because I want to get it right. Pulling things out of built-ins or raceways is not something you want to do after you get it done and you're, oops, wrong cable, wrong place. So I've been spending a lot of time there hopefully, so I can be like Bill and be on the air. Why am I putting Barryflex out? Well, I now have, after 14 years, I have some trees, and there could be a number 8 wire going vertically up 31 feet in a tree. But hey, who's counting, right? The initial RF sweep on that looks really good, and particularly for just bare wire versus a ground. And I'm using for a ground plane Faraday cloth that you see called Magic Carpet, etc. The initial sweep on it has been much better than I thought, but I'm going to put a 4-to-1 Ballon from Palomar Engineers. Bill mentioned him getting their RFI kits. I'm going to test that and re-sweep it. So I'm excited about getting that antenna out, because it will be far enough outside of the noise envelope of the house. Every house has kind of a little envelope around it that's basically household RFI. So I'm excited about that. I've got a 2-element Yagi beam from High Gain that I'm actually going to install in my house. And fortunately, the direction it will be in will be directly toward London. So that's on 2015 10. So I've got a little bit of that work to do. I was not able to get my right rotator cuff operated on, so I've got a little time where I can do a little bit of stuff before I get that surgery rescheduled. Tinkering with antennas, I was able to find, count them, folks, 43-foot squid pole. It is a carbon fiber pole. I'm not as sure about that, but what I'm going to do is to follow what a popular YouTube thing on a revolutionary end-fed antenna, what he's calling the Faraday stick. And instead of Faraday tape running it up the outside of a squid pole, and then you can put it back, pull it back down, but it makes contact when you pull it out. I'm going to use copper tape. It's a better conductor. It should work better and have lower resistance than Faraday tape. I've measured Faraday cloth. So I'm going to tinker with that. And it would be cool to have a telescoping 43-foot antenna that you could take on POTA activations. I've ordered a dual clamp in camera clamp that I think would like clamp on to a picnic table, but then turn the opposite direction and hold that antenna. May not work. I just love building antennas. So I've been tinkering a bit with that, Martin, and doing a little bit of writing about amateur radio. Those listeners who may read occasionally my blog at k4fmh.com, it's syndicated out through amateurradio.com to about 10,000. Been doing some data analysis, and some of it's been focusing on the number of ham licenses over time and ARRL membership over time. That got about 1,000 hits the first day it was published. I've got a second one out in a study about technician license retention or lack thereof. So I've got 2 more that I'll be putting out. I'm working, as we record the podcast, I'm working on measurements of being active in ham radio, and how do we measure that? We've done that in the Canadian National Survey, but I'm going to show whether or not members of the Radio Amateurs of Canada or not are members more active. And that will be the next blog post, and will be out very soon, but actually using data that's available, as opposed to somebody just shooting from the lip, as we'd say, Leslie. That might be a term you might like. So, Martin, not as busy in getting things done.
Yes, I've heard of
that. Getting things done as I have, but still having fun.
Yeah. Well, you said to me, I throw the hand grenade in the room often. And then you said, I think I threw 2 or 3 hand grenades in the room. So,
well, I'm told that it might be a subject of the board meeting next week. It's already on their little internal chat room.
I couldn't possibly comment.
yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what ARRL says. And just off memory, Frank, your blog is k4fmh.com, is it?
That is correct. I have another one at foxmikehotel.com, but these are on the k4fmh.com.
Okay. That's and I urge listeners, go and have a read. It's surprising how we can be misled. Let's put it that way. Right. That's a great one, Frank. Right, Leslie, what have you been up to?
Oh, not very much, I'm afraid, Martin. I had a bit of a prang a little while back, and I've been out of action for 5 weeks. So, but I'm a lot better now and all up and about. The only thing of note is I've managed to rescue a scanning antenna. It's a friend of mine in Brighton. Thank you very much, Ursula. It's very much appreciated. And we got this antenna down there. It does need a bit of TLC, and I've got it on the bench, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. So that's all for the moment, Martin.
Yeah, fine business. But I'm glad to know you're back in action. I know you weren't very well for a little while, although your voice wouldn't have necessarily given it away. But no, seriously, I'm glad you're back in action, mate. Martin, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, not as much as some of the other guys. I had an incident. I can't remember if I mentioned it here. I had an incident with my car where the antenna cables that go into my car were damaged. They were damaged by some nuisance foxes. So my mobile station has been off the air for a while, and I've been trying to look at a way of getting antenna mounts properly on the car, because I've had mag mount antennas on. They're okay, but obviously they're not ideal. I do have a roof rack on the car, and I had an antenna mounted on the roof rack, which was great until I actually want to put anything on the roof rack, like a big one of those big, I forget what they call it, the big boxes that go on the roof box on the roof of the car. And then I had to take the antenna off. So I managed to find some trunk mounts that were slightly smaller than the ones I had, because the ones I had were quite large. They were a little bit too big to fit anywhere on the car. Fitted fine in the old car, but on this one they didn't fit. But I found that Comet make a slightly smaller mount, put them on the car. Haven't wired them in yet, but they're on the car in the right place, and the antennas seem to be okay now. So very excited about getting that back on there. And actually today I have been demonstrating to some of my colleagues who are not RF guys at all how radio and the different antennas work. And the way we've been doing this, we've actually at work, we've just recently purchased some brand new radio microphones. These are just upgraded. They're just newer models. They're all digital and all singing and all dancing. And with those came multiple aerials. We obviously have the little stubby aerials that come with them. We have omnidirectional higher gain antennas, and we have, I guess, they're log periodic antennas. And you plug them all in, and they work in diversity with each other, and you know, it was all happy. But I plugged them into our in-ear monitor transmitter, which is like a 10 milliwatt transmitter, to demonstrate how these different things work, and sent my colleagues off down the corridor. And like, we try it on this antenna, and you tell me when you lose the signal. We play some music down it, and like, okay, yeah, we lost the signal about here. Okay, now we'll put it on the omnidirectional antenna. Like, okay, yeah, we get a bit further. Right, okay. Now let's put it on the omnidirectional antenna and not use 20 meters of RG58 coax. Let's use 5 meters of RG213. Oh my God, it goes even further. And then we do the same thing with the Yagis. Like with the Yagi, you can get to the other end of the building. And, you know, a couple of little experiments like that. To me, that's stuff that I just know because I'm a radio guy, but explaining that to some of my colleagues, they were, oh my God, mind blown. And now I understand why we need these better antennas on these things, and, you know, how you get rid of the interference and things like that. Although I do think that, you know, the £200+ you pay for each antenna is quite expensive, considering the frequencies we're using are in the middle of TV bands around 650 megahertz, and a television aerial would probably do just as good a job, although it wouldn't look quite as slick on the sound desk. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been playing with in the last few days. Oh, and I did some D-Star pictures the other day as well, just while I was putting my son to bed. He was sort of laying in my arms, going to sleep, and like, okay, what am I doing now? I'll just play with D-Star for a bit and send some pictures on this. So yeah, bit of fun.
Yeah, sounds fun. And like you say, you and I would understand this stuff. Sometimes showing somebody something actually happened is a good one. And if you're sending D-Star pictures, I've never had a lot of luck with it. When I receive D-Star pictures, there's always masses of it missing. But then I'm normally trying to do it through a hotspot. And as I say, the guys at Pennine Ham usually send some D-Star pictures at the end of their lectures, and I only get half the picture, or, well, not half, but I get a lot of blocks missing. So maybe you and I can do a bit of that sometime, mine.
There is an activity. They do activity. I think it's about 7:00 of an evening. I can't remember if it's on 72D or 54B. I don't have the radio to hand. But let's have a play. It's I've never had a problem with D-Star pictures. It's
Okay.
it's fun. But let's play with it offline.
Yeah, no probs. Okay, Chris, what have you been up to?
Blimey, not as much as you guys. So well, over Christmas I had flu, so I wasn't that well for a few days. In fact, I was in bed for a couple of days actually, so it wasn't fun, especially after having had the flu vaccination. It obviously wasn't that strain that that I got, unfortunately. So I'm just recovering from that a little bit. I've got a bit of a cough still, but it's been a couple of weeks now, so that's kind of definitely getting better. Before Christmas, I think I mentioned before on the podcast that I bought one of these portable power stations. My one's branded Jackery. There are other ones out there as well. And I did a little video on YouTube. I did a bit of testing. I put it onto the oscilloscope to see the AC sine wave, the output, and measuring voltage and that sort of thing. So
excellent video. So anybody who has those, it doesn't have to be Jackery, but they've got another power station. Look at Chris's video and follow what he did. Very good work.
Thank you, Frank. I did a similar one years ago for a petrol generator. I've got a gasoline generator that has the pure sine wave output, and I have to say, it's not really a spoiler, but the one I've got, the Jackery device, has got a very good output, very nice, smooth sine wave, even under load. So that was good. Done a little bit of HF operating, not a huge amount, just through the holidays and things, just put the radio on now and again to see who's out there. Did hear quite a bit of activity on 10 metres. I think that people are reporting that's been pretty good. Heard a few stations on from the States on 10 metres. I don't think my aerial is particularly good for 10 metres. I think I did speak to one or two stations on that band, but it's not a very efficient aerial for that band. But with the tuner, I can probably just about make it work. Been doing some club kind of admin work, but getting some more speakers booked. We've got a chat from HamCation talking to us in a few months' time, for example. So that should be interesting. Along with we've got lots of other speakers. I think I'm okay now until middle of the year for that, which is good. But I always like to have a few in the pipeline, so to speak, as the club secretary. And what else? A work colleague, it's quite funny. I mentioned the word diode at work. There's a device called a data diode, which is an IT security thing that's to do with networking and providing air gaps on networks and things. But I mentioned that we got onto the topic of electronics, and it turns out he's quite interested in electronics. And I mentioned that I do radio, and he suddenly got all excited. So every time I speak to him now, he's asking me about radio stuff. So as it's not someone I actually work physically in the same building with, but next time I see him, I might actually take up maybe I'll give him a little cheap Chinese radio just to peek at him. So I might try to recruit him into the amateur radio hobby. We'll see how that goes. He might remember my little project.
He can't be cured once you've done that.
Once he's got the knack.
Yeah, that's it. It's done.
Yes. Well, we'll see. There's the worst things he could be doing.
Balance will never be the same.
To be fair, it's quite a senior guy actually as well. But no, every time I speak to him now, it's yes, and SDRs and blah blah. I think he's got a scanner. I think he's interested in receiving stuff. But anyway, we'll see. And not really radio, but I've been doing some learning over the Christmas period. I've actually been at work most of I've not had any time off, particularly on Christmas, apart from the public holidays. But it's not been that busy. I've actually been doing some coding skills. I've been learning some .NET, some ASP.NET stuff. I thought that was quite interesting. So that might be useful for various things in the future. So that's it from me.
All right. Well, you have done a fair bit more. Well, in keeping with everybody this side of the pond, I haven't done very much either. The Christmas period sort of hijacked me a little bit. I've done some 2 meters and 70 SEMs, and I've been on the talk group a little bit more than I normally do, but it has been quite quiet. I did do some HF one day, and I managed to work one of the YOTA stations. In fact, I worked the YOTA station in Romania, so from my house in the UK on 20 watts. So I was quite pleased with that. Been doing a lot of just sorting documents out around here that needed doing. So I've been working on a lot of that. And Colin got me for Christmas 3 RSGB bulletins. Now, that's before they became Radcom. 1966, 1967, and 1968. And they're not.
Wow.
And it was just great to be given them and have a look at what was happening in radio that time. So, all right, they're second-hand magazines, but what an interesting look at history. So I quite enjoyed that, reading stuff in there and looking at the adverts from, and you see the price are really, really cheap. And then you think, well, yeah, but people didn't earn very much money then either. So, interesting. And last, I've been messing around with a few odd circuits on breadboard, but not much amateur radio. So that's where I am. Okay. So all's left for me to do now is to thank the guys for joining us. Bill's already left because he had a hard stop. But thank you guys for joining us. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TC8.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks for the invite.
No problems. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMA.
Thank you, and a great enjoyment on my end, guys.
Yep. And also, last but not least, I'd like to thank Mr. Leslie Butterfields, G0CIB.
Thank you, Martin. It's been a lively one tonight.
It certainly has. Okay, I'm going to say 73s to you all, and we'll continue on with the podcast. 73, guys.
Cheerio.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BLY. Early downloaders of the ICQ podcast, and there's probably a good reason to sign up for our newsletter so you know when the show's released, only have a few hours left to make their application for the ARRL Foundation Scholarship application. This will be running through till Monday the 13th of January at 11:59 p.m. EST. So you need to go to their website, arrl.org/scholarship-program. Applicants must be active licensed ham radio operators, and more than 100 scholarships range from $500 to $25,000 will be awarded to deserving students. So check that out, and I know you're going to have to be quick on the release of this show, but hopefully if that's something you qualify for, make an application, and good luck. Now, January is straight key month, and this is a great opportunity to get involved there with your favourite key. It's the 19th annual Straight Key month, and this event is hosted by the Straight Key Century Club. So throughout the month, you'll be able to work K3 Yankee stations in all US call areas, including Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto Rico. And in addition, stations from regions within IARU membership of Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, Oceania, and South America will also be on the air. So a real great opportunity for some worldwide contacts here. So this will be, running through the month of January. So it's a great opportunity to get involved in. We'll put a link to the group's website on ICQPodcast.com for you, so you can check out, all the information. February sees HamCation taking place in Florida, and there'll be a POTA meetup on February the 6th. It's the third annual POTA meetup, and it will take place in Apopka in Florida. Great opportunity to get involved at the Waikika Springs State Park from 9 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. If you go along, not only is there the opportunity to activate this wonderful state park, but also there'll be door prizes, lunch, and more. So great opportunity there. Again, as always, we'll put a link for this on the ICQ Podcast webpage, and I hope you get involved. Just a final call that if you took place in the POTA activities in December before Christmas, they say you've only got a few more days to submit your information on your activities. So the IRSGB are looking for this information and request you, submit as soon as possible so they can finish off, all the calculations for that event. So do check that out and pass on your details. Right, we're going to head over to our features episode. This episode's feature is In the Grid. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now for this episode's feature from the ICQ Podcast.
Hi guys. For this episode, I wanted to talk about something that I was chatting to a friend of mine the other day about. And the person's not an amateur, but they were interested in what I was up to. And I thought, well, I'd recheck the information I gave him. And I gave him pretty much all of it, apart from a few things that I didn't know. So like everything, I went back to him and confirmed a few other bits and pieces. I think the most important thing is we can't know it all. We know enough to cover what we want to know. And sometimes when somebody asks you a question, if you don't know, it's always better to say, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. So anyway, let's talk about Maidenhead grid squares. Now, I think 99% of all amateurs know what they are and what they do, blah, blah, blah. But there were a few things I came across. So what is the Maidenhead grid system? The Maidenhead grid system is used by radio amateur operators to pinpoint their location during contact exchanges. So in fairness, I like to know how far I've gone. I might not know the town in your particular country, but it would be nice to pinpoint you on the map within a reasonable area, and to get a rough idea of how far my signal's gone. So by you giving me your Maidenhead locator and me plotting it on a map, and there are lots of apps to do that and I'll talk about that in a while, you can find out where you are. So what do we use it for? Well, I've just said we use it to find the distance between our two contacts so that we can either draw a line on a map or see it on a website. Now, this is quite useful because you sometimes get quite excited. Oh, my signal went 2,000 kilometres or whatever. In all honesty, it's not 100% accurate to the level we go to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, how did the Maidenhead locator system come about? Well, Maidenhead is a town just west of London, and in fairness, I can't remember much about Maidenhead itself. Every time I went there as a service engineer to fix a computer system back in the 80s and 90s. So it's probably changed a hell of a lot since I last went there. But it's a lovely, lovely part of the world anyway. But the Maidenhead locator system, as I say, was first conceived by a meeting of the European VHF managers back in 1980. So I would have thought this would have been around a lot longer, a lot before 1980, this system, but you can never tell. So the Maidenhead grid locator, as I say, is the work from a gentleman called John Norris, G4ANB. He devised the system. So how does all this work, and how do we find each other? Well, first off, dividing the world up into 324 fields and around the globe, and each of these is 20 degrees in longitude by 10 degrees in latitude, right? So the world is divided up into 324 fields. Now, dividing that up, that means you can start off with anywhere between AA and RR. Any other letters outside of AA to RR are irrelevant. They're not part of the system. They're not even in the system. So, for argument's sake, I live in IO. So that will be my first two letters. Then you divide each of those 324 fields into squares. Now, those squares are numbered between 00 and 99. So for argument's sake, I live in IO 91. Fairly big part of the UK, southern part of the UK. But that's how it's broken up. If I move further to my east or west, if I move to my east, I move into JO instead of IO. If I move to my west, I go up in numbers, or down in numbers rather. So there you go. And then within those 100 squares, which are 1 degree by 2 degree, or approximately 70 by 100 miles, so that shows you how big, say, IO 91 is, or any of the other locations. You then have 576 territory squares of 2.5 minutes by 5 minutes. And these are then divided up into more squares, so that you can have between AA and XX. So there are 576 of those. So it gets quite complicated. But I think the thing is, when you start working it out, you start off with a field, which is the first two letters, can be anywhere between AA and RR. Then you end up with a square, which is anywhere between 00 and 99. And then you end up with a subsquare of anywhere between AA and XX. And by knowing those locations, you can then find out where in the world you are. Now, there's lots of ways you can find that out. There are various apps for mobile phones. If you know your locator, and say, give you a full one on mine, is IO91 Victor Juliet, you can then find a map, and it puts you reasonably close to my location. If you want to get any closer, almost to street level, then we need to add another set of digits from 00 to 99 and break those other squares down even smaller, and that will pretty much get you to street view. Now, the Maidenhead locator is recognised by a lot of other people, so in the UK you can put your postcode in, which is the equivalent of a zip code in the States, and that will tell you where you are on your Maidenhead locator. So that's another way of doing it, but a very useful system. It allows you to check where you are. It's a bit of fun on the map as well, but it's also interesting to see how far your signals went. Not terribly technical this time, but I hope it was of interest.
Well, everybody, I really hope you've enjoyed our first episode of 2025, episode 447 of your ICQ Amateur Radio podcast. And Dad, here we go, back into the swing of things again after the Christmas festivities. And as I say, it's great to be looking forward with our hobby again and thinking of all the really cool things we can do in 2025.
Yeah, it certainly is, Colin. Unfortunately, I've noticed that a couple of rallies have been cancelled this year already in the UK, which is a little bit of a worry. Edmund sent me one the other day saying doesn't look like this one will ever happen again. Canby Island rally we normally go to early in February has been cancelled due to the school having something else on. So I'm hoping it'll be an interesting year, providing too many things don't get cancelled, Colin.
Yeah, maybe we need to decamp to the States this time next year, and we can maybe go to HamCation. There's an idea, but as I say, I'm not quite sure the bank account will hold up to it. But as I say, just does look like our American friends get a lot more early year fun than we do in the UK. So as I say, guys, please do support your rallies and your opportunities to get out and about, because I say without that support, as I say, they do seem to be starting to disappear. So yeah, please, as I say, obviously do consider supporting those things. Talking about support, we really would like to thank Walter Washburn, KT0 Delta, our anonymous donor, and our monthly annual subscription donors for keeping episode 447 of your ICQ Amateur Ham Radio podcast advert free. As always, we'd like you to consider us if you've got value from the show today. We ask you to turn that into a monetary figure. Go to ICQPodcast.com/donate and send it our way. And all the money that we collect from your very kind donations go towards keeping our show advert free and paying our way for services like, say, the digital group, the newsletter, the website, etc. Everything that accompanies your ICQ podcast show. So, please do consider us if you've got some benefit from today's show. And visit that link, ICQPodcast.com/donate. Right, we'd also like to thank Chris, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike Zero, Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, K4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie, Golf Zero, Charlie India Bravo, for taking part in the News Roundtable. Many thanks, guys, for joining us there and your thoughts there at the first show of 2025. And our other colleagues will be with us for our next episode in 2 weeks' time for episode 448. So we look forward to their views as well. Right, well, I've actually, finishing off this show in Ireland before I head to the UK to come see you for an early trip in 2025. But as we will be releasing this show together from London, it'll be my responsibility to help you find Mrs. B a chocky bicky or something in the back of the cupboard as we release this episode. So, as I say, I'll be helping you make sure there's a good treat in the cupboard if you haven't got one already.
Yeah, well, we got a few in the cupboard, but it's always pleasurable to see you. Shame the football match has been cancelled, but great to see you when you come over. And we still got some of that super duper whiskey you brought over at Christmas. I didn't drink it after you left, so there's still some in the bottle, Colin. And I'm sure we'll have a good day.
Yeah, we will do. Flying visit, but I'm looking forward to it. Well, guys, we're going to bid you 73s. Happy New Year again. Guys, I hope you really do enjoy 2025 and the hobby's fantastic for you. And importantly, we'll catch you all again in a fortnight's time. 73s all.
Yeah, 73.